Have you ever felt the sting of silence when someone who once seemed to be an important part of your life suddenly disappears without explanation? It's as if they vanish into thin air, leaving nothing but the echo of their absence. But what if I told you that their departure has nothing to do with something you did or didn't do? What if it's not about losing them, but about the fact that you've become something they can no longer handle? For the chosen ones, people who have awakened to their own power, their strength, their truth, it's not a loss, it's a sign that you are transforming in ways they never anticipated. The world has a way of distancing itself from those who carry too much light. This light forces people to face their deepest fears, their insecurities, their hidden truths. It becomes too much to bear, and so they ghost you, retreating into the shadows of their own comfort zones, unable to deal with the undeniable force of your presence. You have become a mirror they can no longer face, the burden of truth and the unveiling of shadows. It's strange, isn't it? One day everything is fine, you're going about your life, happy, content, living authentically. But then you begin to awaken. You start seeing the world differently, and with that new vision comes a profound sense of truth. You realize that there are things you've been hiding from yourself, things you've allowed to exist in the dark corners of your heart. The more you embrace this truth, the more you begin to shed the facades that once protected you. And then something incredible happens. You begin to share your truth with those around you. It's liberating, this feeling of being completely real with the world. But for some, it's terrifying. You become the mirror that forces others to face the parts of themselves they've kept hidden away for so long. Suddenly, they're confronted with their own darkness, their own insecurities, and they can't escape. The weight of your truth is a burden they can't carry. The more you stand tall in your authenticity, the more you force them to see the lies they've been telling themselves. And so, they ghost you. They retreat into the shadows because they can't face what you've made them see. You've unknowingly exposed their deepest fears, and it's too much for them to handle. The fear of unpredictability, your power to disrupt. Change is terrifying, isn't it? People like routine, they like to know what's coming, and they thrive in predictability. But the moment you started shifting your life, you became unpredictable. And for some, that's dangerous. You didn't just change on the surface. You evolved. You took bold steps, making choices that no one could have anticipated. Maybe you changed careers or started a new business. Perhaps you cut ties with toxic people or stopped accepting behaviors that once flew under the radar. Maybe you started excelling in ways that left people speechless. The unpredictability you now exude disrupts their sense of control, and that's what scares them the most. They can't figure you out anymore. Your next move is never predictable, and they don't know how to handle that. You've become a wild card in their carefully ordered lives. One minute, they think they know you, and the next, you've completely shifted. This uncertainty gnaws at them. They thrive on the stability they've created for themselves, but your change is like a storm they never saw coming. It's not just that you've changed, it's that your change shakes the very foundation of their lives. They ghost you, not because you've done anything wrong, but because they can no longer control the narrative. They've lost their grip on the predictable world they once had. And your unpredictability is a constant reminder of the power you now wield. The force of your energy too strong to withstand. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the shift? You could almost feel the energy of the people around you change. Conversations falter, eyes avoid yours. There's a palpable shift in the air. This is the power of your energy. You've become like a force of nature, a presence that fills the room with an intensity that's undeniable. Your energy is powerful, so powerful, in fact, that it's become too much for some to handle. Your passion, your drive, your very essence radiates in a way that makes people uncomfortable. At first, they're drawn to it, fascinated by it. But when they get too close, they feel the weight of it. Your energy doesn't just fill the room, it dominates it. It's like standing too close to a fire. At first, it's warm, inviting even, but soon, the heat becomes too intense, and they find themselves stepping back. You've felt it, haven't you? The moment when people subtly distance themselves, as if the very air around you has become too charged for them to breathe. They can't quite put their finger on it, but something about you is too intense for them to withstand. They ghost you not because they don't like you, but because your energy forces them to confront things they're not ready to face. They can't handle the intensity of your presence. Your energy is like a storm, a tidal wave that sweeps through everything in its path. And for those who aren't ready for that force, they retreat into the shadows, away from the raw power you now exude. They feel dwarfed by your brilliance, like they're being consumed by the fire you radiate. And in their fear, they vanish, leaving you standing strong in your own light. You are the mirror that reflects their darkness. Have you ever noticed how people react when you are completely yourself, when you speak the truth that others avoid or confront things that they refuse to face? It's like you become a mirror to them, not the kind they want to look into, but the kind that reflects everything they've been trying to hide. The more authentic you become, the clearer their flaws, insecurities, and suppressed emotions become. And for some, that's terrifying. I remember a time when I had a close friend, someone I thought I could trust, someone who always seemed supportive. We had deep conversations about life, philosophy, and our personal struggles, and for a while, it felt like we were on the same page. But one day, something shifted. It was like a veil had lifted, and I could see the things about them that they hadn't shared: the bitterness, the jealousy, the fear. I didn't try to see it, but it was in their eyes, in the way they acted, in the things they avoided talking about. I realized that my very presence, my truth, was pulling those shadows into the light. And that's when they started to pull away. It wasn't me, it was them. They couldn't stand facing what I had made them see, the parts of themselves they had buried deep inside. I wasn't the problem. I was the mirror that reflected everything they were too afraid to face. And so they ghosted me. They disappeared into the background, retreating into their comfort zone, unable to confront the truth that my authenticity had brought to the surface. You see, when you are truly yourself, you do more than just show who you are, you show them who they are too. And for some, that's a harsh reality they aren't ready to face. That's why they retreat. That's why they disappear. Transformation and growth, the catalyst they couldn't handle. Transformation is never easy, but it is always necessary. It's the process of shedding your old skin, becoming something new, evolving into a version of yourself that no one saw coming. And as you grow, you begin to realize that not everyone will be able to keep up. I've gone through my own transformation, a period of intense self-discovery and change that shook the very foundation of my life. I remember the exact moment when everything changed. I made the decision to take a risk, to step into the unknown, to stop playing small and start living the life I had always dreamed of. It was terrifying at first, but something inside me clicked. I started pushing myself beyond my limits, taking chances, and following my passions with a fierce determination that left everyone around me stunned. But not everyone was happy with my growth. Some people in my life, who once seemed like friends, started pulling away. They didn't say it directly, but I could see it in their eyes: the unease, the discomfort, the fear. My transformation was a mirror to them, a reminder that they were stuck in their own lives, unwilling to take risks or make changes. My growth forced them to confront their own stagnation, and that's something they couldn't handle. They ghosted me, not because they didn't care, but because they couldn't cope with the fact that I had become something more than they were ready for. I had become a catalyst for change, a force that pushed them to question their own lives, and they retreated, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, and most of all, fear of seeing the version of themselves that they weren't ready to face. They couldn't handle my transformation, so they vanished. But what they didn't realize is that their ghosting wasn't a rejection of me, it was an acknowledgement of the power my growth had awakened in them. The catalyst they couldn't handle. The power of your passion drawing them in, then burning them. Passion is a powerful force. It's the fire that burns within you, the fuel that drives you to chase your dreams, to push through obstacles, and to become the best version of yourself. When you live with passion, people are drawn to you. They want to be near your energy, to witness your drive, to see how you light up the world. I've had many people come into my life, captivated by my passion. They saw the fire in me and wanted to be close to it. At first, it felt good to be admired, to be appreciated, to be seen for who I truly was. But soon, something changed. The same people who once praised my passion started pulling away. They started avoiding my gaze, backing off when I spoke about my goals and dreams. It wasn't that they didn't admire me anymore. It was that they couldn't handle the heat. My passion, my drive, my unshakable belief in what I was doing became too much for them to bear. It's like they thought they could bask in my glow. But when they felt the heat, they realized they weren't ready to be consumed by it. I remember one friend in particular. We had always bonded over our shared ambitions and dreams. But as I began to go after mine with everything I had, something shifted. My passion became a mirror to their own fear, their own insecurities, and they couldn't handle it. They didn't want to face the reality that my fire was bigger than theirs, that my commitment to my dreams was unwavering. They couldn't stand in the heat of my intensity without feeling like they were being burned, and so they disappeared. They ghosted me not because they didn't care, but because my passion was something they couldn't withstand. It was a fire that drew them in, only to burn them when they got too close. But that's the nature of passion. It's both a light that attracts and a heat that can consume. If someone isn't ready for it, they will retreat. But remember, it's not your fault. Your passion is your strength. If they can't handle it, it's their loss, not yours. Authenticity as a threat exposing their masks. Authenticity is something many people yearn for, but few are truly willing to embrace. In a world that values perfection, image, and external validation, being authentic can be seen as a threat. But that's exactly what makes it so powerful. I've always tried to live authentically, to be true to myself in a world that constantly tries to mold us into something else. And let me tell you, it's not always easy. There are times when being authentic feels like you're exposing yourself to the world, putting your true self on display for everyone to see, flaws, mistakes, and all. But when you do, something incredible happens. You start attracting people who appreciate your authenticity, but you also start making people uncomfortable. I've seen it happen over and over again. People who once admired me suddenly started pulling away as I embraced my true self more and more. It wasn't that I had done anything wrong. In fact, I was more confident than ever. But my authenticity was exposing something in them, a facade they had worked so hard to maintain, a mask they had been wearing to hide their insecurities. I remember a time when I shared a deeply personal story about my struggles with self-worth and how I had learned to accept myself, flaws and all. It was a vulnerable moment, and I thought it would bring us closer. But instead, it pushed them away. They couldn't handle the truth of who I was, the rawness of my experience, and it made them realize just how much they were hiding behind their own masks. They ghosted me, not because they didn't like me, but because they couldn't compete with my authenticity. They were too caught up in their own illusion, in the perfect image they had created for themselves, and they couldn't handle the fact that I had no mask to hide behind. My authenticity exposed their insecurity, and that's why they ran. But here's the thing: authenticity is never a threat to those who are secure in themselves. It's only a threat to those who are pretending to be something they are not. So don't ever feel bad for being true to yourself. If they can't handle it, that's not your problem, it's theirs. And when they ghost you, remember this: it's not because of your flaws, but because your authenticity shines a light on the cracks in their own facade. Spiritual awakening, the unseen path you unveil. It's funny how life has a way of nudging you towards something you didn't know you were meant for. For years, I was just like everyone else, living day by day, following the conventional path and never questioning much of anything. But then came a moment, one that shifted everything. It started with a feeling, a deep yearning inside, as if there was something more to life than what I had been experiencing. Something wasn't right. Something felt off, but I couldn't put it into words. Then, like an awakening in the night, I started seeking answers. I dived deep into spirituality, meditation, and introspection. Slowly, everything began to change. I started to see things I had never seen before: patterns, synchronicities, and a deeper connection to the world and people around me. At first, it felt surreal, like stepping into a different dimension where everything I thought I knew was questioned. But the more I embraced this awakening, the more I realized that it wasn't just about me. It was about everyone around me. I started to see the cracks in people's facades, the walls they had built around their fears, and the chains they had forged out of their past traumas. And with this new perspective, I began to speak up, sharing the insights I had uncovered. But what I didn't expect was the reaction from those closest to me. They couldn't handle it. I became a mirror to them, reflecting back the things they had been running from. I wasn't telling them what to do or how to live. I was simply sharing what I had discovered, the spiritual truths that had awakened me. But to them, this wasn't just an awakening. It was a threat. A deep, subconscious fear stirred within them, one they couldn't explain. The truth I had uncovered was too uncomfortable to face. They retreated. They ghosted me. At first, it was confusing. I thought I was helping, sharing something transformative. But then I understood. I had opened a door they weren't ready to walk through. Their spiritual awakening was triggered by me, but it was too much for them to bear. I had unknowingly shown them a path they weren't prepared to walk, and in their fear, they pulled away. Ghosting wasn't rejection. It was a defense mechanism against the uncomfortable truths I had uncovered. But it didn't stop my journey. It only fueled it. My spiritual awakening was not just for me. It was a sign to others that transformation was possible. And whether they accepted it or not, my path was mine to walk. The untouchable you fear of being defeated. There's a power that comes from being untouchable, from standing firm in who you are, unwavering in the face of adversity. But that power isn't always welcomed. It wasn't something I set out to achieve, it just happened. Over time, I learned how to handle life's challenges with grace, to stand tall even when everything around me seemed to crumble. It was a process, of course. There were days when I felt defeated, when I questioned myself, but something inside me always reminded me that I was capable of more than I realized. I remember a particularly difficult period when everything seemed to be falling apart. Relationships were strained, opportunities were slipping away, and the world seemed to be pushing me to my limits. But in the midst of all that, I discovered my inner strength. Instead of folding under pressure, I rose. And as I did, I noticed something. People started to react differently to me. Those who once admired my strength began to feel uncomfortable around me. They couldn't understand how I remained so unshaken. They couldn't fathom how I was able to rise above the challenges while they struggled to keep their footing. My calmness, my resilience, and my unyielding spirit became a reflection of what they lacked. They feared that they would never be able to reach that level of strength. And in their fear, they retreated. They ghosted me, not because they didn't want to be around me, but because my untouchable nature reminded them of their own limitations. They feared being defeated by me, not in any overt way, but by the sheer presence of my unshakable strength. They couldn't handle being around someone who refused to be knocked down, and so they disappeared. But here's the truth. Their ghosting wasn't about me, it was about them. It was about their own insecurities, their own fear of inadequacy. When you become untouchable, you become a reflection of everything they wish they could be. And for those who aren't ready to face that, it becomes easier to retreat. But remember, your strength isn't something to apologize for. It's your superpower, and anyone who can't handle it doesn't deserve to be in your life anyway. The guilt that haunts their silent admission of wrongdoing. It's funny how guilt has a way of creeping up on people. They think they can bury it deep, lock it away in the dark corners of their minds, but guilt always finds its way to the surface. I've seen it happen time and time again. People who wronged me, who hurt me, thinking they could get away with it, thinking I would just forget. But the truth is, I didn't forget, and neither did they. I remember a time when a friend of mine made a decision that left me devastated. They betrayed my trust, took advantage of my kindness, and never apologized. At first, I was angry, then confused. But as time passed, I began to move on. I started growing, evolving, and becoming stronger. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on: my success. As I moved forward in life, as I achieved things they never thought I would, they began to feel it, the weight of their guilt. My progress became a constant reminder of their betrayal, a silent accusation they couldn't escape. With every achievement, every step I took toward greatness, their guilt grew heavier. It wasn't my success they feared, it was the way it exposed their wrongdoing. They couldn't look me in the eye anymore without feeling the weight of their actions. And so they ghosted me. They disappeared, thinking that by doing so they could escape the guilt that haunted them. But the truth is, you can't escape guilt. No matter how far you run, it always catches up with you. And while they thought ghosting me would silence their conscience, it didn't. The guilt remains, silently lingering in their minds, a constant reminder of the wrong they did. They ghosted me not because they didn't care, but because they couldn't face the truth of what they had done. And in the end, that's the real reason people ghost you. It's not because of something you've done wrong, it's because they can't handle the weight of their own actions. Their guilt is the silent admission that they know they've hurt you, and no amount of silence can erase that. Conclusion: claiming your power, how ghosting is your strength. At the end of the day, ghosting isn't something you should fear or feel bad about. In fact, it's a powerful reminder of who you are. The people who ghost you are the ones who can't handle the truth of your transformation, the intensity of your energy, or the depth of your authenticity. Their disappearance is not a loss. It's proof of the strength you now carry. You've become someone they can't ignore. Someone whose light is so bright that it forces them to confront things they aren't ready to face. But here's the key. When people ghost you, it's because you've outgrown them. It's because your growth has triggered something within them that they aren't ready to deal with. They retreat not because they don't value you, but because they can't handle the power you've tapped into. Ghosting is not rejection. It's simply an acknowledgement of your strength. It's a reminder that you are too powerful, too real, too authentic to be ignored. So embrace it. Claim your power. Let their silence fuel you to keep moving forward. The truth is, you're not losing anything by being ghosted. You're gaining everything by stepping into your own power. Keep shining, keep growing, and never let anyone's fear of your light dim who you are.